Everybody feel sorry for Mike and his blue balls.
No.
It's not a bird, it's not a plane, it's Superhero Slate. It's a modern podcast where we talk about everything that's great, like movies, TV, superheroes. It's Superhero Slate. Oh yeah.
Hello and welcome to Superhero Slate, the show where we run down the latest superhero entertainment news.
We love TV, movies, and superheroes, so let's talk it all out.
My name is Chris Dillard.
And my name's Mike Royer.
And this week, we're going to get asked the hard-hitting questions, Mike. We're not asking them for once. This is a very special episode, but we do have two bits of news. I do want to talk about this news, Mike. We were talking about this before the show. We have a bit of news regarding the Joker and some regarding the Avengers, all right? I can tell which one you're excited for already. So.
Yeah, and just to get the record straight, if anybody's really curious about why they're having an episode right after we just said we were going to be on summer break, this is a random Tuesday night, so we decided to record an episode so our lovelies out there don't have to go a week without us. There hasn't really. We thought there might not be a whole lot of news in like the last 2 days since we recorded our last episode, but it starts dropping already. So now I'm just like getting the hot sweats of like, oh my god, what are we gonna miss this whole week? We're not gonna do an episode. So I could take some bold predictions as I've done in the past, but I like it. It's a convenient week that we're off on vacation because like most people are going to be holding a lot of this news to their chest for Comic-Con, which is going to be a huge episode for us, but that still doesn't stop Warner Brothers from trying to keep toys from leaking that are revealing things from the Aquaman movie, and it doesn't stop Warner Brothers from also making really bad decisions when it comes to Joker movies.
look, we're going to talk if this is an upgrade or a downgrade from Jared Leto's damaged Joker, because I can't make sense of it.
It's
just for anyone who's out of that loop. The reports are Joaquin Phoenix has been locked into Todd Phillips' Joker movie, produced by, I believe, I forget who was produced by. Did Goodfellas? I don't know. I can't think of the director's name. See, that's how off we are this week. I don't have any notes in front of me. I'm just.
Okay, so I'm curious. I'm going to ask you a question before we start off this hostful Q&A here. Yep. How old do you think Joaquin Phoenix is?
I think he is...
Don't look it up. I have the answer in front of me.
57.
How old do you think Jared Leto is?
I think he is 42.
Okay, I'm about to blow your mind now because Jared Leto is 46 years old.
Okay.
And Joaquin Phoenix is 3 years younger.
Joaquin Phoenix is 43?
Yeah, he's 43.
Fucking way.
He is younger.
Oh my god.
What I was trying to think in my head was the only way that this makes any sense is if this is just an overall correction. Just kick Jared Leto out of the DC universe, just reboot it with Joaquin Phoenix, do your Joker origin or whatever that we don't want, and then in the new future DCU movies just Joaquin Phoenix is the Joker, okay? Like that's just how it's going to be, and I'd be okay with that. But then I was thinking, well, how do you do an origin movie with a guy that's like way older than Jared Leto? And then I looked it up. I was like, he's younger. This doesn't make any sense. So I don't know what Warner Brothers is doing. This kind of just points in the direction of this whole like one-off movie universe that they want to do. But like, superheroes are supposed to pal around together. I don't want one-offs.
If it is a good movie, will that change your mind, do you think? Do you think they can do a good Joker movie?
I don't think it will change my mind because that's the whole thing. Like, I think this movie could be really good. I think you can do like possibly a good one-off Joker movie, but it's almost just kind of like, well, what do I do with that one-off movie? Like, this is going to sound like so like selfish and just like I'm a horrible like movie consumer, but it's just like, okay, so you gave me one really good Joker origin movie, but like, what about all these other movies that are coming out? Like, how am I supposed to binge watch this one? It's really, really weird. How do I put this like in context? Like, I think the whole reason that we do this podcast is because we really like talking about superheroes and we like talking about this stuff. And I think what really kind of like makes all of this really exciting is like all of the possibilities. like everything, like think of all the crazy things that could happen with all these characters coming up. That's why we're really excited about the X-Men and the Fantastic Four maybe joining the Marvel Universe, because that's what's fun about comic books, is like turning the page and all of a sudden there's like a Beast cameo and like your Century comic book or something like that, some sort of just weird, bizarre stuff that you would never expect. But like a standalone Joker movie with Joaquin Phoenix, like I don't know what to do with that after I watch it.
let me put a pin in this a little bit here just to end it. Everyone loves The Dark Knight, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did we get a Joker origin in The Dark Knight?
We did, and it was very vague, and I liked the way that it was.
Well, he kept reinventing his origin in that. So if we give the Joker an origin, does that remove the mystique of the character and the draw of that character?
I mean, that is one of the big prevailing arguments about not doing it. The only way I could see this really working is if this became some sort of weird movie anthology series. I really don't think it could work, and it only makes sense if maybe it's like an HBO series or something like that, where like maybe every episode of the HBO series or every couple episodes is just a new origin of the Joker, because that'd be really cool and really creative, and it could be just kind of like this one-off series.
Doesn't American Horror Story do that? It's the same actors, but they reinvent the seasons are entirely not connected.
Exactly, and that's basically like what the James Bond movies are, and what the Batman movies were. So I don't know. It just seems weird. It's like they're pulling back this old formula, but like I feel like you just got to go all the way in either direction. I'm just confused.
Yeah, it's very confusing, but at least at the end of the day, hopefully the joke is on us, Mike, and it's a good movie.
We got some hot poppin' Tuesday news there, huh?
That's right. The other big news is I actually realized I didn't realize this until today. They just announced the Avengers Infinity War home release dates today, and it's July 31st and August 14th, and I'm like, that's this month, Mike. They're not holding anything back. This is the only home release time for Avengers this year. They can't hold anything back. And
yeah, I thought about this earlier today, and it just makes me think this is probably going to be a trend moving forward. There used to be this nebulous amount of time back in the day when we were just butt babies that there between when the movie would leave the theaters and when it would eventually come out, like, to be sold as physical media. But now I feel like studios are just like, if we leave a gap, that's almost like a pirating gap. It's like a gap where there's demand, where we could theoretically just fill it. So I feel like now they just do that with the digital release. Like as soon as Avengers is out of theaters, which I think when this comes out, Avengers might still technically be in theaters in some places. You could probably buy it digitally and then go out the same day and maybe still catch it on a big screen.
That's what Black Panther did. So yeah.
Yeah, so I think they're just going to close the gap, at least especially on these really big movies that are just trying to pull up as much box office as possible. But I'm not complaining. I want to watch this movie again.
I really do too, and I don't want to pirate it. I mean, I want them to shut up and take my money, Mike, as soon as they can. I have 2 copies coming in the mail, so we might give one away on the show, Mike. What do you think?
Ooh, do it.
All right, cool. We might give one away. We'll play that later. We'll play that later. But I think that's cool that it's this month. Like that is like, how do you hold that like so close and then like, oh yeah, in like 3 weeks. 2 weeks, this will be out.
What if they did some sort of crazy promotion where be the first to find out what the next title of the Avengers is? You have to buy it and buy it again, and then you'll see the title reveal. That'd be crazy.
Yeah, but only one person has to buy it before the internet finds out.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, that's the problem with the internet these days. You can't really see. But what if they gave away golden tickets in every other one? Like in your case of the movie or your digital copy, did you live or die from Thanos? Each one is unique.
Oh, I like that idea. That kind of goes along with that subreddit, if you haven't heard of Thanos Did Nothing Wrong. I think they finally built it up to 1 million subscribers on Reddit, and then the mods just automatically banned half of them. I like that idea.
They were still working on it yesterday, and I joined, and I haven't looked to see if I did it yet or not, but yeah, it's so fun. This is so fun. I like the idea of it. So, but we're not really here for news, Mike. That's just the fun stuff this week so far. We won't be able to come back, but if you had some people send in some questions for us, a lot of them actually from Superfan Jim.
Well, of course, that's why he is the super fan.
That's right. Not only does he share the show with his buddies and pals, even he shared Ant-Man and the Wasp review, and I'm like, "What do you think of it?" He's like, "I haven't seen it yet." And I'm like, "Well, all right, you're cool. We'll go with this." So, he sent some questions here, and you're not looking at them, are you, Mike?
No, I don't know any of them.
Great. So we're just gonna go through. I'm gonna pitch the question. We'll both answer it. So, The first question is probably a really good question here. How do you guys settle on what stories to read and which ones not to?
No, that's a question for you, really.
So as you can tell, Mike doesn't do the show notes. Mike does the artwork. He makes it look pretty, and he got a shout out on YouTube today, Mike. So congratulations.
Oh yeah, I think I saw that.
Yeah. So if you're on YouTube and you're that person, Mike does our artwork. So the whole show started about us sending superhero news to each other via text messages and just talking that way, and then we're like, I think it was you. You're like, let's do a podcast. This is big right now. Podcastings are the thing. I'm like, oh, okay. Let's research and jump into it. And we did. And I think the news that I put on here is the only news I feel that is worthy to send you or send to our text messages, because if it's not something that we're passionate about or have any knowledge on, we kind of sound like jackasses. So I like to put stuff out like maybe you haven't heard, but things that we can definitely talk about or have an opinion on.
Yeah, it also kind of helps that our show has a little bit of a focus to it. So we do really try to keep it in the realm of like comic book TV and movies, and then superhero TV and movies. And then every once in a while, like there might be something like Pacific Rim that's not really based on a property, but it's like incredibly nerdy enough to talk about. So
Jurassic World.
Yeah, like I know you're the one that's compiling the notes, but it does feel like magically somehow there's always just enough news for like an hour every week. I don't know if we just stumbled across that formula, or if like you're really just like cutting the wheat and chaff away from the news. I'm sure there's some like weird random stuff that we could talk about, but like I think we get the big stuff every week.
Yeah, I like to also think our show is very factual. We focus on the facts of what we know rather than like, hey, this is rumored to be happening. I mean, of course we do dive into rumors occasionally, but like, you know, if you want to talk about rumors, that could be a whole show on one rumor alone, you know? So I think the facts are really what drive the show, and I really don't know how we do the hour every week. It just is magically working. It
takes practice. We didn't really know how long the show was going to be until we kind of did the first initial pilot of the show, and then I think we're just like, okay, I guess it takes us about an hour to talk about all this stuff. And then we noticed if we ever have any like guests on the show, usually every person we adds about like a half hour to the show. For
everyone gets a half hour. That's pretty much the formula we've got here. And you know, that's actually, there's another question down here. I'm just gonna skip to that now. It says occasionally there are guest hosts. How are these guest hosts chosen? Example, did they win a raffle? Did they have pics of me or you in compromising positions? Did they pay a significant amount of money?
Oh, I wish.
Usually if it's a guest host on my end, I just pick of like, you know, I try to find people who haven't been on the show before, who listen in our local and can do the show with me, because we'll talk about this here in a minute. We're not in the same room, and sometimes it's hard to find people locally who can sit in the same room and do it. But I've been very lucky. I've had my friends from California, Luke, my friend in Michigan, Brian, people, you know, locally, friend of the show, Jason, step in, and it's been interesting. But I mean, different people come to mind for each week, and usually maybe the topics decide for me. What about you, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to like inflate my own self-worth and say like podcasting is a very specific skill that you must be trained in. But I think sometimes you kind of know that some people, you can put them in front of a mic and they can just like talk and talk and talk. And some other people, you know, maybe they might freeze up in front of a microphone. But luckily, I think everybody we've had on the show has just been able to snap right along, because that's kind of the whole formula here, is just like a conversation. I'm obviously not going to have somebody like guest host or fill in for me, or I don't want to talk to somebody that doesn't really know anything that we're talking about. So I think as long as whoever we're talking to has some sort of like personal stake in like the nerd culture, I think is perfectly suitable for the show. As long as you live and breathe this stuff just a little bit in some way, in some vertical, whether it's like comic books or, you know, movies or TV, you're just looking for the passion is all.
Well, that also, I mean, we've spent years. This is our 4th year doing this. Talking on Skype and not seeing each other has been something we've had to learn, and I think we've learned each other's, I guess, quirks and when we're going to stop talking and start talking pretty well, so we don't talk over each other or stumble most of the time, I feel.
Oh yeah, we don't have like any visual cues. Like when you're talking with like a person in the room, you can like see their face. You can kind of tell when they're wrapping up something. I have to like I probably pay attention to your voice more than I pay attention to my own wife's voice. Because like, oh, I gotta know exactly like how's his inflection moving? Is he about to wrap up a thought? Can I jump in? What's going on here? And then sometimes we got to keep the show moving, keep it moving along. And I'm just like, okay, is he trying to wrap up this topic? Does he want my input? It's just like, and sometimes we got to check and be like, okay, we've been recording for about 45 minutes now, and oh my God, we're only like halfway through the notes. We got to pick this up.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of its own relationship, Mike. We're kind of a power couple, if you will.
Oh, you know it.
In the podcast world. And there's another question here that ties into this. With us not being in the same state, what challenges did you have to overcome early on to make the magic happen, and are there still challenges now?
Bandwidth in my USB port.
Yeah. So early on, I recorded in an apartment. I had a laptop, and one time my graphics card burned up in the middle of a podcast, I believe, and we still somehow saved it. I don't know how we did it. But now I have a little studio that I can talk in and do this with. But I mean, early on, it was just, figuring out how do we make this work between two people. We don't have a production crew. We don't have anyone funding us or meeting deadlines. Like, how do we find the magic in this between ourselves to keep this going and not make it a job and keep making it fun?
Yeah, that was kind of, I think, our number one priority when making the show. We didn't want to sound like a bunch of amateurs when it comes to the audio quality and how we're putting the show together. So I think that is really helpful, that we make sure that we're dotting all of our I's, crossing all of our T's when we're recording. Unfortunately for the Ant-Man review, I plugged my microphone into a broken USB port. So the audio that's recorded just is picking up from just the internal mic on my earbuds, which apparently the audio quality wasn't that bad. But luckily those things don't come by too often. So we're just trying to make sure that everything sounds crystal clear. I'm not trying to toot my own horn like the last question, but I listen to some highly produced real podcasts that come out of legit studios with producers that still don't really understand that people don't want to listen to a recorded Skype call from the Skype software. So we're recording our own audio tracks right to our hard drives, and then I send mine to Chris, and he connects it all together. So just because we're just two dudes doing this from across the state doesn't mean we can't try to make it sound as great as possible. Across
the country, even, Mike, not even just the state. I think the challenges now are how do we. And this is, I guess, on my point, what's the next step in podcasting? Now, what's the next thing that we can do to be on the cutting edge? And while technology doesn't necessarily make the show more consumable than it did when we started, I still think that I pride myself in saying we have chapters in our podcast now. We are a video podcast in iTunes now using the YouTube videos. So I'm always trying to find where's the next thing. And our biggest hurdle right now for me is getting on Spotify. Since we do this, we host all our audio on SoundCloud, so that's why we pitch SoundCloud every week. They don't have a way to just submit it to Spotify and get automatically approved. So I think that's my next challenge. But between us and our conversations, this is actually, we always Sunday we're like, hey, Sunday, you want to record? Yeah, what time? Cool, that works. It's probably the most chill conversation I have all week long is deciding when are we going to record.
Yeah, it's something that I'm curious how much the podcast will be tested in the future when we possibly have children running around and multiple things vying for our attention. But I think I will always try to make it a priority to just find a way to carve an hour out of my Sundays just to make it happen. And I think we're also lucky that Sunday works as a day for the two of us, and since we're in different time zones, usually we can find crossing hours that work well. And also Sunday's a good day to talk about all the news that wrapped up. We're just kind of lucky all of this coalesced in the way it did. I don't think we were smart enough to think of this formula. We just kind of fell into it and it worked.
Yeah, well, between the two of us, it's like a perfect storm of all our abilities and how we think and everything that just worked. I again, don't look a gift horse in the mouth, man. It just kind of happens, So I'm good with that. But there's another question here: how has this show impacted our lives currently, Mike? Has this show impacted us beyond just us recording and our friendship?
Ooh, I know a lot. I know a lot about superhero stuff now, more than I would have, and I would say it's it's almost just like a passive knowledge that I have. Like I'll go to like get-togethers at bars or kind of cookouts, and I'll hear people, talking about superhero stuff because, it's that high in pop culture now that you don't just have to go to like a comic book store to hear people talk about this out in the wild.
They're not in hushed tones.
Yeah, and they'll be like throwing around ideas or things that they've heard before, and like I'm not trying to be like, oh, bless your heart over there, but you don't really know what you're talking about.
Because you got old news.
Yeah, you got old news. You're really far behind. And, like, I always do my best not to come in and go, well, actually. But if anybody ever asks my opinion, I'm just like, oh, yeah, we talked about this last week on the show. This happened and this happened and this happened. So I would say I'm waiting to go to a trivia night where that is a question. Anything to do with superheroes. Actually, it was. I was at a trivia night a few weeks ago, and they were doing it was like one of those categories where like it's a bunch of random questions, but all the answers kind of coalesce into one theme. Have you ever done that at a trivia night before?
I've only done one trivia night, and it was Star Wars, so I wouldn't know a regular trivia night.
Well, one of the questions on this was what was Marvel's first TV show in the MCU, and like everybody at the table like looked directly at me, and I was just like, "That's right, we got this, guys. This is gonna be good." So,
what was the answer?
It was Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., mofo.
Thank you. Just checking. You didn't give me the answer. I'm like, is he just playing it off here? Did he get it wrong? Did he not want to tell us? No, yeah.
No, we got it right. But beyond that, I know a whole lot about podcasting now. I was a very avid podcast listener before we started making our own, so it's kind of cool knowing how it gets made, how things get submitted, the technical side of stuff, and I know a little bit more about audio now. You're the one that edits all of the show, but I'm such an audio novice still, and I'm fine keeping it that way.
Yeah, I think impacted my life. I've learned a lot more technical things than I ever thought I would about podcasting. The different formats, the bit rates, how to make this all be fed into iTunes, so you guys just have to click subscribe and you'll get fed to everything to you appropriately. How to do show notes, how to do all that. So make sure I find myself writing time codes down at work a lot more now because of the show, because they definitely have changed my life in this regard. But in personal lives, I mean, I have a lot of Superhero Slate shirts. A lot of people ask about it sometimes. I don't know if they ever subscribe or listen, but they at least ask about it. So they're like, oh, you have a podcast, or my wife will tell people, oh, he does a podcast. I'm like, oh, what is it? I'm like, oh, it's on superhero movies and TV shows. And then I get to use, my co-host lives in LA, and they're like, oh, okay, so this is serious business.
Well, it's funny. It's kind of the opposite for me. Like out here in Los Angeles, everybody has a podcast. It's like a cliche thing to have. Everybody and their mom has something where they're like recapping TV shows, or they're just like struggling comedians that are just like on the mic telling jokes for like an hour, or struggling to do that at the very least. So I usually keep it close to my chest. I'm not the guy that's going to show up at the party and be like, hey, well, guess what? I have a podcast. Maybe in any other city in the country, I'd be able to get away with that and not sound like a douchebag. But out here, usually I have to slowly work it in.
Yeah, well, that's all right. I mean, it's okay. You should just give them some, quantum mumbo jumbo and see if they figure it out. No, I'm kidding. I'm just kidding. I like to jive. I like the fact we can rip on each other, Mike. That's always. Remember the Ninja Turtles movie that we always brought up? That's
still a good movie. I would gladly welcome a third film in that franchise. I think we need China to cough up the money.
I think they're rebooting it. Do you want them to go? Do you want to do a time travel back to China again?
Yeah, why not?
Like the live action ones did.
Those movies are fun. I don't have the patience or really the editing prowess to kind of do those like YouTube essays on movies. But if I did, or if I could pay somebody to do one, I would have them do it on those 2 Ninja Turtle movies, and just as like a love letter to be like, these movies were not as bad as everybody thought they were. People just totally way overblew the design of the characters, and the fact that Michael Bay was just like loosely attached as a producer. He didn't actually direct or write the movies, so it didn't get its a fair day in court.
I just can't do Johnny Knoxville as Leonardo, man. Like, that's where I'm out.
Johnny Knoxville's a national treasure.
So's Nicolas Cage, but that was his movie.
All right.
All right. Anyway, so someone asked me, and this is kind of out that Chris, being a local celebrity, have you ever used the "Do you know who I am" technique to get something that would normally be out of your grasp, like reservation, pops, memorabilia? I really don't have any weight around here. I don't know where anyone thinks I mean, I do happen, like, my wife's like, how do you know someone, or why does someone talk to you everywhere we go? I'm like, I don't know. I just have that face, or that, hey, he's wearing, cargo jeans with a hat backwards and a baseball tee. He must be really cool. I don't know. But I've never used that before. I do know a lot of people in different industries, so one of the ladies I work with, her boyfriend is the owner of a local restaurant, so I get to walk in there and he's like, oh yeah, I got a table for you over here, here's some discount coupons, have at it. I'm like, great. So it is fun to do that, but I never ever think I'm above anybody else. I'm never like, oh, don't you know? I never do that. That's bad.
The funny thing is, I don't think that's really ever going to happen with podcasting. Even like the top 10 podcasts in iTunes right now, if any of those people like walk into the restaurant, no one's going to know who they are. Like, I think even if you were familiar with their voice, you'd probably just think like, oh, why do they sound familiar? Oh, I don't think you'd ever attach them to a podcast that you listen to. So I think it's going to be a long time before there's like rock star podcast hosts.
Have you ever seen the episode of Seinfeld, The Wiz, where yes. Elaine dates the guy and she's like, oh, he's so familiar, and Charming's, I'm the Wiz. That's how I feel like I am. I'm the Wiz in this situation. So yeah, there's that. Just going down the list here, how much do you guys really discuss outside of the show? I don't know if we discuss a whole lot of topics in the podcast outside of the show, but we have a chat going that's usually random stuff, like regular real life stuff.
Yeah, I think like most people out there, they have like group chats kind of categorized by different grouping of friends. Like we have a group chat with a friend of the show, Quentin Parker, where we're typically talking about like tech stuff and like nerdy movie stuff. And then I have like other group texts for like people that maybe would just like talk about things going on in Los Angeles, or maybe you just kind of like categorize your friends like that.
I have a Pokemon Go group chat. So
yeah, there you go. I do not have one of those, that's for sure. But we do every once. Sometimes, sometimes news is just so big that I don't want to wait until Sunday to talk about it. So we'll throw it up in the group chat and talk about it. Usually, the one things that we do our best to keep till like Sundays is when we see movies. We try to keep all of that close to our chest.
It goes real quiet whenever we watch a movie.
Yeah, it's really weird. Like I'm glad that you have the self-restraint, because you can see movies 3 hours before me, sometimes sooner than that. So usually I'm glad that you're somebody that is tight on spoilers, so that's good.
Well, I thought it was funny this week. We saw Ant-Man and the Wasp, and friend of the show, Quentin Parker's like, I know you guys have seen it, but have you talked about it yet? And we were like, no, we're recording. Then when it was done, as soon as it was done, we were like, okay, we can talk about this now. We've got it out of the way. So.
Too much quantum mumbo jumbo. I got my piece out there.
That's right. That's. I'm gonna use that for like 2 weeks, and then I'll forget about it by our next episode. And I'm like, I forget what we were talking about. So, so yeah, outside the show, other stuff. Things we do around the house. I don't take selfies, but the most selfies I've ever taken, I've sent to you and Quentin in our group chat. So I had a bobby pin in my hair last weekend. If anyone cares. No, nobody cares.
Nope, I don't think so. Yeah. If this medium had feedback, it would just be chirps.
Yeah, it's true. That's also why I do podcasts. I've got a face for radio, Mike. That's what I tell people.
Oh, you're too hard on yourself.
Oh gosh, I just need you to build me back up. Another question is, how much do you edit out of each episode? Really, not a whole lot.
Yeah, pretty much next to nothing, unless the session gets interrupted by some sort of like critical need from one of our wives.
Yeah.
Like something's like going wrong. Somebody dropped a glass or in the kitchen or something like that.
I just got to go to the bathroom. Hold on. No.
Or like in the past, I would say more than anything, it's been like technical difficulties, like Skype is messing up, or our bandwidth like just dropped out of nowhere for no reason. So that's usually there have been episodes where like literally half of it was recorded like while we were talking on like speakerphone with each other. we got to ditch Skype and just use the phones, man. The internet's not working.
Yeah, we've had to work our way around things, but hopefully no one has ever noticed, and that's our goal. But we have set and talked for half an hour before a show about like going to the grocery store.
Oh yeah, we talk about a lot of food before we hit that record button. LaCroix has been a hot topic the last couple of weeks because we've been getting
cheese
into
is always popular in these things.
Talking about snacks, goodies. We had a really funny moment when it came to Red Bull where I was trying to explain to Chris this new sugar-free Red Bull that I've been drinking, and like in the mid-sentence he's like, "Let me stop you. You have no idea. I know everything you're about to say."
I actually, one of my coworkers, she was like, "Have you had the purple Red Bull?" I'm like, "Oh, honey." I just like whipped out 2 out of my pockets right then and there. She's like, "How? Oh, have you not told?" I'm like, "It's fine. It's cool. Here's one of them."
We threw the idea around for a while of recording our warm-ups as its own podcast, but I think it's just too much work, and it was going to be centered around like what we bought at the grocery store last week. I think we called it like Two Grocery Guys or something like that, which I thought was a pretty snappy title.
It is a great title, and honestly, we'd have to give up one show for the other, Mike, I think, because I mean, as much as it's not you that's the problem. I think at a certain point you can only talk for so long before like, yeah, I gotta go somewhere else.
If we can't all be Kevin Smith that records like 8 podcasts every week. We could only feasibly ever do that if we didn't have like other jobs that paid the bills.
Yeah, that paid for the podcasting essentially. Will there ever be a gag reel of sorts? I don't have the time or patience to go through all the cut footage or audio. So probably not.
Well, I would say the little snippets that we do before and the end of the episode is kind of our gag reel.
Yeah.
We just try to say random stuff or like
just take it out of context.
Yeah, like we'll pull up the Skype call and we'll just start chatting, and then what we do is what we call lay down the base, where we just start recording, and usually that's the bit that gets chopped out, but we'll just start telling a random story and we'll say something stupid, and that is the very first couple seconds of every episode. Yeah,
it's either one or the other. There's no rhyme or reason why those are chosen. It's just like, this sounds really funny out of context, or this is the least offensive thing we said before we recorded. So, but yeah, we do those at the beginning and ending of each episode. So I guess that is our gag reel, but I'm never going to go back through anything because that's a lot of hours to go back and listen.
We usually delete our audio, at least our individual audio, after we use it, because there's no reason to hold on to it once you combine it. Yeah. But I've been lazy and I haven't been deleting my recordings, and I've just been throwing them into like this old audio folder with the hopes of one day I can get a hold of that software that can make anybody say anything, and I can just like upload all of this audio samples of just me talking, because it's a one-sided conversation because it's only my end. It's like, oh, I can make a robot talk like me. So maybe one day I'll delete those, but I don't know. I thought it'd be kind of funny.
Yeah, well, we can cross our fingers, but I don't know if that'll be anytime soon. That's just Mission Impossible stuff right now.
So in case I disappear off the face of the earth, you can keep the podcast going with Robot Me.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, what was it we were using the other day? The Google something that was doing that with the Google Assistant. I was making it say things for us, or the Alexa app. I don't remember. I was like, oh, I'm gonna make it say our intro, and it did. I was like, oh, that's really interesting. So might play with that. Another question is, how much time is truly spent making an hour-long episode each week, Mike?
My wife could tell you, because she always reminds me that, like, you're in there for way longer than an hour. I'm like, no, we're not. And then it's like, oh, we are.
Yeah.
Because if we're just doing a normal episode, no reviews, I would say I try to put aside at least an hour and a half.
Yeah, that it's funny you mentioned that. My wife would tell you the exact amount of time as well. She's like, I'm like, oh, we're gonna record a show. It'll be like 30 minutes. She's like, you'll be back in 2 hours. I'm like, leave it alone. We'll be back when we're back. But again, our wives are very supportive of what we do, so we do get to do that every week with their blessing.
It's the biggest shortcoming of having all of these bingeable TV series out there, because me and my wife watch a lot of the same shows, and if I'm in here talking on the microphone, she has to find something else to watch. So it's like, as soon as I'm done, it's like, okay, finally we can get back into the show we were watching.
That's true. But other than that, I mean, I spend about an hour or 2 hours every week gathering notes and getting just doing the fact checking, really. And then afterwards is about a half hour of post-production, throwing it all together.
Yeah. Usually towards the end of the week, maybe around Friday, or sometimes I wait until the last minute, like Sunday morning, is like when the featured images for the show will go up. The images that we tweet out and put up on Instagram and on Instagram stories. those can sometimes be time consuming, but I know I could crank them out really quickly if I just grab any sort of like stock photo of like Ant-Man out there. But then I'm like, well, they're not really unique, so I always try to find a way to make them at least visually entertaining. But I would say, to be fair and honest, Chris definitely puts more time into this than I do.
That's fine, but Mike does make it pretty. You did create all the artwork for our YouTube videos. You created each one of those drawings by hand to do that. So I mean,
with these hands.
That's right. So it's very much a team effort. Like, this show I don't think it could go on as well as it does with just one of us.
No, I've had some people reach out to me asking like, oh, we should do a podcast together, and I want to tell them like, I don't really have any more time to do any more podcasts, unfortunately. And also I want to say, do you have all of the same skill sets as Chris? Because I'm not going to do any of that stuff if we do a podcast together. You're literally going to have to do everything, like submitting it and like editing it and uploading it. I don't have time for any of that. So
yeah,
that's hints to anyone out there who ever wants to do a podcast with me. You're going to have to do all of the work. I'm just going to be here on the microphone.
Haha, he's my host and you can't have him. So a question for you, Mike. Since you live in LA, can you get into press screenings for films?
Unfortunately not yet. I've had the ability to like submit to see films a little early. Sometimes there'll be like advanced screenings of movies before they come out, and they'll hit like larger theaters like Chicago, New York, and LA. But every time I get to those links, they've already been tweeted out for 5 minutes and all the seats are gone already. I'm not sure if anybody else is familiar with these types of people, but out here in LA, outside of the big theaters, there's kind of like, I don't want to call them like ticket scalpers, but they work like, I think, independently on contract with movie studios. And what they'll do is they'll hand out tickets for free screenings of movies. And after the movie's over, I think they hand you like a postcard and they ask you, how you liked it. It's kind of like a test screening. Mm-hmm. And sometimes they pay you. Like sometimes I think they technically pay you like $1, maybe just because they can't do it without paying you. So they're like, oh, we'll give them the minimum of $1. But I'll see those guys around a lot. But I think they're technically not allowed to tell you what movie you're about to see. So they very vaguely shout out to the sidewalks, oh, come see a free movie. It's an action-adventure movie from Warner Brothers. And there was one, I've never done it before because they're always on like random Tuesday nights, and I just cannot get away to go see a movie on a Tuesday night. But there was this one guy this one time that I almost went up to him and grabbed a ticket because he said he had a superhero movie from Fox, and this was about 2 months ago. And I was like, he's probably handing out a screening for New Mutants. And just before, I almost turned around and went and grabbed a ticket, but I was already on my way, and I was like, oh, he was probably showing screenings for New Mutants. I should have taken that chance, but I have a feeling I probably wouldn't have been able to talk about it on the show, though. I'm sure I have to sign my life away not to be able to say what I saw.
Man, I bet it would have been Dark Phoenix right before they did the reshoots.
Oh, maybe. But, I mean, I like, we're intelligent.
It's the Gambit movie. They filmed it in secret.
Oh, that title screen would show up, and I'd be like, no! They'd kick me out of the theater. We don't want your opinion, sir.
Yeah. Well, I think press screenings are an entirely different beast. Since we're in different states, it's hard for, like, I couldn't get into a press screening Mike could get into, and vice versa. So if we were to be invited as press, one of us couldn't talk about it, and the other one wouldn't know what's going on until it came out anyway. So I think our casual going is working best for us.
Yeah. It's like a slow ladder that you work up. I think we're technically might be considered press at like C2E2 and Comic-Con, but we gotta keep pushing up that ladder before anybody starts inviting us to screenings.
Yeah, I think one time I got to see the first Avengers 3 weeks early, and I was really stoked on it. And they did make us sign an NDA. So, but I mean, I'd love to get into press screenings. Like I think the last thing I saw early was King Arthur. And no, it's not worth it. I've
heard those screenings, and like they're like a double-edged sword. The first side of it is like you're usually in a theater with a bunch of critics that are very that understand like what it's like to be in a press screening, and they're always, I would assume that they're very nice, and they probably don't talk and eat a bunch of loud snacks. But also you don't get the same type of crowd reaction. You don't get the hoops and the hollers that sometimes is fun in like in an Avengers movie. Like when Thor comes down, returns to Earth, and starts to beat up all of those Outriders, like at a critic screening, it probably would have been silent. But the movie theater I was in, everyone was just like, fuck yeah!
Yeah. I mean, hopefully one day we get to that point because I would love to do it. Until then, I might have to take a job at a movie theater to watch them before they even hit. And then I thought about it, Mike. I really thought about it. Another question here: what is the hardest part of doing this show and the hardest part of production?
I'm going to go ahead and say time zones. Just trying to make sure that we can find a time in our day that lines up. Usually we're pretty lucky, but sometimes like there's been occasions where like I've had to wake up super early because you've been busy the whole day. Sometimes I've been busy just during my normal afternoon, but that means that you can't record until like 10 p.m. at night. And so I think that's probably our biggest hurdle.
Yeah, and if that's really our biggest hurdle, I think we're doing okay. I think the hardest part, I mean, for me, is also making sure we have enough news that's talk worthy throughout the week. I don't want to just put in BS to have BS, and sometimes we do, and I delete it, or it's at the very tail end of an episode because it's kind of lingered. So
that's where we put the Transformers news.
Yeah, and I guess that would also be like the hardest part of production as well is, you know, I guess that minuscule like 30 seconds after we were done recording where we get to save the file and you're like, please don't delete itself, please don't delete itself. Like that's it. But other than that, like this is it's kind of, I go autonomous, like automatic whenever it's done, like when we're doing the show, and it's done before I know it. I don't know. It's pretty, I don't want to say easy, but it's natural.
You're a machine, Chris. You're the Terminator.
Yeah, it lines up with what I do for my job weekly, so it's okay with me. You know, that works out. Are you using the same equipment you started with, Mike?
I am. I'm still using my Blue Snowball. Same computer, same pretty much everything. I keep it consistent, so there's no surprises.
Yep, except for those USB ports.
Yes. Slowly failing on me.
I am not. I'm on my third computer, mostly because I upgraded my desktop and then my laptop burned up on me. So I'm on my third desktop, and this is what I do all my work on anyway, so it's faster and got a bigger screen. But I also have the Blue Yeti I upgraded because I like the metal build of this. It doesn't fall over. I'm not worried about it falling apart. Maybe, I don't know, you probably aren't, but I ended up giving my Snowball to friend of the show Brian Smith, if he ever wanted to do a show or be a guest host with me. So I've passed on my old equipment and onto this new one. I like my Blue Yeti. I actually gave a recommendation for it the other day, for someone who was wanting a microphone for a podcast. So it's good. Lastly, Mike, this is totally off base, but what is your PS4 name, if you can give it out, because people would like to add you?
Oh, well, if you want to at me on PS4, I think you're running out of time, just because I think, in order to play online, you have to pay for the PlayStation.
It depends on the game. Like Fortnite, you don't have to have the PS Plus, but some other games you do.
Well, you can find me on PlayStation at Fresh Grill Marks.
Is that like a random name? I don't know how you got it. Like, I'm so confused.
Well, my goal making a name like 2 weeks ago was I wanted it to be phonetic. I wanted it to be something that you could read, and I didn't want any numbers or special characters. So I was like, somehow this has to be something like legible, basically. And I think I landed on Fresh Grill Marks because like a couple of years ago, when we had an apartment with carpet. We were vacuuming it, and I noticed that like I always like the way carpets look like right after that they've been vacuumed, and I think I looked over at my wife and I was like, "Oh, isn't this nice? Don't you like these fresh grill marks on the carpet?" And I was like, that phrase always stuck into my head, and so it doesn't really make any sense if you don't know the context. But I thought it was kind of funny.
I mean I was like, man, that's a good name. How do you get that?
I mean, it also works for meat. I mean, if you're like grilling chicken, you want those grill marks. I don't understand why they need to be fresh. I think grill marks are grill marks whether they're fresh or stale. So, but there you go, fresh grill marks.
Fresh grill marks. I mean, I think a fresh grill mark is one where you just turn that patty over for the first time. Like, you've never seen those grill marks. They are virgin grill marks.
Fresh. Ooh, that's the definition of being a man.
Yeah, I agree. But I mean, it's a good name. I think mine's like Valdan 1987 on there still. I don't even know my PlayStation. I'm gonna look this up so I can confirm. I'm getting. My wife is like, "Where are you at? Why are you still recording?" So that's what the ding's for. I'm gonna look at the PlayStation after. What game have you played? Any more games other than The Last of Us yet?
I'm still on Last of Us. Occasionally, I pop into Trials, Evolution, or Trials, whatever it's called.
Fusion.
Fusion, yeah. Those are the 2 games I'm in right now. I kind of want to play one of those like Bloodborne games next. What's the other version of Bloodborne? They're made by like the same studio, kind of same mechanics.
There's Bloodborne, and then there's the where you bless the sun, God bless the sun, and oh man, what is that called?
What is it called? All I know is like it looks like it's supposed to be like infamously hard, and you're supposed to like really take your time, and you die a lot. And I don't know why that sounds
There are
fun.
people yelling at us at their phones right now because we can't think of what this. It's not. I know Bloodborne's the PlayStation only one. I want to say it's like, I don't know. It's Death something, I guess. I don't know. We'll figure it out later. We'll text each other like, oh my god, this is what it was. But other than, I don't have any other questions from anybody, Mike. I think that's it. I mean, anything else you want to let people of the show know that's the secretive behind the scenes?
No. Just subscribe to the Superhero Slate podcast, and we'll be here every week because we're friends, and we want to share the friendship, and we want to share the love of superheroes with everybody. And I sincerely hope sooner or later Warner Brothers steps their game up, and then we can maybe more equally talk about superhero movies down the line between DC and Marvel on the show.
Yeah, I would like to do that. I would also like to thank everyone who does listen and subscribe and share the show with their friends, because without that, I mean, I don't think I would have had the motivation to do this extra little 45-minute episode in the middle of the week, because we're both not going to be available on Sunday. So I think this was fun. And if you guys ever have any more questions or anything you guys want to add to the show, don't be afraid to email us, reach us out, tweet at us, hashtag us. I don't know how to reach us, Mike. We're all on all these platforms. But I do have to give a shout out to Mike. Your tweets and your Instagram posts have the best descriptions and emojis. I'm like thoroughly impressed.
Oh, in general, like my own accounts, or for the show?
For the show. Like when you post those, like I'm like, man, I wish I had that kind of skill and patience and didn't do this for a job and was burnt out all the time about posting on social media. So yeah, so thanks for that. But if people want to hear our regular news episodes and maybe some reviews, and our next big one is San Diego Comic-Con, woo! Where can people find us at?
You can find us, as always, at superheroslate.com. That's the best place you can find all the avenues we host our show and to get our show notes. So if you're listening to a news episode and we're talking about some sort of leaked screenshot or maybe some sort of leaked toy of Black Manta from Aquaman that we'll be talking about in 2 weeks. Actually, we'll probably have a real visual look at him because we'll have that Aquaman trailer by Comic-Con.
Hopefully, yeah. I mean, I want the trailer, but these statues were pretty interesting to look at.
Yeah, but you can get that in our show notes, and you can also find us on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Google Play Music, SoundCloud, TuneIn, Stitcher, iHeartRadio. You can like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter and Instagram. If you want merch, you can get that at superheroslate.com/store. And if you're a fan of the show, we love hearing from you. We love getting these questions. We can do these Q&As literally whenever. We can tack them on the beginning or end of shows. So if you have more questions, just reach out and let us know. And if you want to be a super fan of the show, like Jim out here who loves to send us in questions, we love our super fans. All you got to do is share the show with a friend, share the show with a buddy, and we will be here every week, even on the weeks we're not supposed to be here.
Even on the weeks we said we're not going to be here. We are liars, Mike. Horrible liars. But until then, we'll see everybody next week.
All right, adios.
Thanks for listening, and don't forget to subscribe.
I think so. Why not?